can't think of a bigger lie in college football right now than name, image, and likeness. When this thing first came into fruition a few years ago, we all thought that entailed players being able to get rightfully compensated off their name, image, and likeness, being able to be used in commercials, sponsorships, and brand deals. But I never expected to see the news that Nico Iamaleava is negotiating a new contract to stay at Tennessee to keep from jumping in the transfer portal. Is this college football or is this the NFL? Because it's starting to feel like the National Football League to me, which is why the NIL is the biggest lie in college football at the moment. These players are not getting paid for their likeness. They are getting paid to play. This is pay to play at this point. This is the NFL on Saturdays. Nico had a pretty good freshman season, but it wasn't good enough to warrant getting a contract extension when he's already making what, like 70 million, or not 70 million, but 7 million. During his recruiting visits to Tennessee, they were flying this brother out on a private jet. Nico Iamaleava could potentially make more money off NIL than what Josh Heupel is getting paid. Do you not know how insane that sounds? Look, I'm all for players being able to get compensated, but contract negotiations is taking it way too far, and this is going to eventually erode and kill what made college football so great. Change is good. Sometimes change is necessary, but not all change is good. And the changes now with college football having contract negotiations, eventually we're going to get the super conferences. That's going to happen sooner rather than later. Big Ten, SEC is pretty much going to be the equivalent to the NFC, AFC. Like, I haven't seen Nico appeared in one doggone commercial. I haven't seen him in no Dr. Pepper commercial, no Hulu commercial, no Netflix, no DoorDash, no Uber Eats, no none of that. I haven't even seen Nico even post like some Instagram partnerships or sponsorships or anything like that. These guys are not getting paid for their name, image, and likeness. They're getting paid to play. Tennessee's in a very awkward situation right now. If you pay Nico a lot and he ends up not improving in year two because he wasn't that good last year, he only threw 4 touchdowns in all of Tennessee's ranked games, college football playoffs included. He did not play well enough to warrant a pay raise. Josh Heupel has to start asking himself, along with a lot of other coaches, is it worth investing so much money into these unproven high school quarterbacks when we can go get a proven quarterback out of the portal like Duke just did, pretty much stealing Tulane's quarterback, or Oklahoma getting John Mateer from Washington State? If I'm going to invest $7-8 million or more of NIL money into a player, I want to invest it into somebody that I know is going to give me high level production. Even if you're a Tennessee fan, you may have a few concerns about just how truly good Nico is going to be, even if you don't want to admit it because of your fandom. But I expected a lot more out of Nico. I expected him to be at least as good as what Lenore Sellers was. Lenore Sellers was better than Nico Iamaleava. The brother was the hottest quarterback during the second stretch of the college football season last year. He scored 18 total touchdowns in South Carolina's last 6 games. That's what I expected to see out of Nico. No, now don't get me wrong. Nico definitely had his moments. He had some really good games against Vanderbilt, and I felt against Ohio State, he was the only player in that game that was showing some fight, but he was mostly carried throughout last year by Dylan Sampson and the elite defense. The defense might not be as good this year as what it was last year, and your ground game may take somewhat of a step back, which means that Nico is going to have to do a lot more. So if you're going to invest more money into him, and you may not have enough money to invest at other areas, like maybe you want to bring in another receiver, you definitely could use some more depth at corner. You may not have any more NIL money to do it because you're investing so much of it into a guy that still has a lot to prove. And don't take this as me hating on Nico, I'm not mad at him. Get the bag. I'll never get mad at a player for getting the bag. What makes me upset is this lie and this charade that we continue to play where we want to make it seem like these guys are getting paid off their names, the being commercials, the being these Dr. Pepper advertisements. No, these guys are getting paid to play. So let's just call it that. I'm tired of calling this shit college football. It's not college football. We are watching the National Football League 2.0. You want to know why the NFL has no interest in creating a developmental league? Because that's what college football is. And now it's never been any closer to the NFL than what it is now. And when these guys become employees and they no longer really have to stay on campus, it's going to ruin what made this sport so great. It's not about getting paid all the time. It's about the pageantry. It's about wanting to commit to a school because this is the place that you dreamed playing for during your whole entire life. You have pride. You want to bring a national championship to this school. It used to mean so much more than just the dollar. But now all the sport is money, money, money. That's why all we talk about is the college football playoffs. Nobody talks about the Bedlam rivalry no longer happening anymore. That's a tragedy. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State should play every damn season. You got Mike Gundy trying to be indirect, saying, if they wanted to play us in the spring, the NCAA, what could they do? College football no longer is college football. This is the NFL on Saturdays and Fridays. Whenever college football gets played, you're watching the National Football League. And I'm tired of pretending that it's not. I'm tired of pretending that I'm still watching college football. It doesn't feel like it anymore. It just feels commercialized, and it just feels so different now. When I grew up on this sport, regionality was such a big thing. If you were a recruit and you grew up in the South and you grew up in Alabama, you either wanted to play for Alabama or Auburn, not just because they could offer you the biggest bag, but because you felt pride. Your dad, your grandfather graduated from those universities, and you wanted to be a legacy player. You wanted to be able to restore that program back to prominence. It used to be so much more, and we wonder why these players opt out of bowl games, why bowl games are meaningless now. They're meaningless now because we have ruined the value of them. We have devalued everything that has made this sport so great. You want to continue to expand the college football playoffs and continue to eventually devalue the regular season to the point where conference championship games don't matter anymore, to where we may just abolish them altogether and just have it like March Madness, where conference championship games are pretty much like playing games to get into the playoffs, when this sport used to mean so much more. It used to mean pageantry. Rivalry games used to mean something because you only played them once. Michigan versus Ohio State is called the game because there are so many high implications in that matchup. The national championship the last couple of years has been decided by Ohio State, Michigan. And now when I have to see that game played 3 times in the season, it doesn't hit as much anymore. It loses its value. You can't call it the game if you're playing it 3 times in the same season. At that point, you got to call it the games. College football, because of NIL, has been ruined. And we got to stop pretending like this thing no longer is the same sport that we grew up watching and that we grew to love. I freaking hate everything that college football is now. And I'm Gen Z. I'm not no old head. I'm not somebody that grew up watching this thing back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And initially, I was somebody that pushed back against people who didn't want the playoffs to expand, people who were cautious against NIL. But the older I get and the more I start to see this whole NIL shebang unravel, the more I start to understand why some of the traditionalists of this sport were so against so many of these changes that is now starting to water down this sport.